Hi all, in today's video we're going to be looking at the next part of dealing with trig equation, which is when we have to deal with the negative. Okay, so when we're trying to solve when maybe sine, cos or tan equals a negative value. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to ask you to take down is this note in this yellow box here. So what the negative does, the negative tells us what quadrants in cast for us to tick. Okay, so if you remember what cast diagram is from the previous lesson, it tells us where our graphs are positive. Therefore, if we know where they're positive, it can help us work out also where the curve would be negative, okay, for each sine, cos or tan question that we come across today, okay. The main thing is that when we deal with the calculator part in the question, okay, once we've ticked our quadrants and we know which part of the graphs we're going to find our answers in, the negative does not go into the calculator. Okay, that is a mistake that a lot of people make year in, year out, no matter how many times I think every teacher in Scotland tries to tell them. It's just something that you have to try and avoid. Okay, so the way to sort of think about it is the negative never goes into the calculator. Okay, you're never going to do sine inverse of a negative number or cos inverse of negative or tan inverse of negative. Okay, I'll show you how we can deal with that looking at a couple of examples. So I'm going to get you to copy down these examples, okay, and we're going to go through it just now. Okay, so the first question we're going to look at is a sine question. Okay, so we're going to solve the equation sine x equals, but I've now got a value that's negative. We're going to work out when sine curve is of the value negative 0.8. Okay, and again we're going to expect to have two answers here for that. So let's get my cast diagram first. That's the first thing we do. So the negative's job tells us where to expect our answer. Okay, so the first quadrant, that's when all graphs are positive. Second is when tan is positive, sine's positive, sorry. Third is when tan's positive, and fourth is when cos positive. So that's us labeling our cast to start off with. Put in our degrees. We start off at 0 degrees, go up to 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and 270 degrees. So we should have plenty of practice at this previously. And now we're going to put in what quadrants we've got. So that's our first one there, second, third, and fourth. And the last thing is my rules. Okay, so the first quadrant answer is x, second quadrant answer is 180 minus x, third quadrant is 180 plus x, and last answer is 360 minus x. Okay, so I'm working out when sine of x is negative 0.8. Okay, so if it was positive, okay, I'm thinking when sine is positive in the first quadrant, because that's when all are positive, that's what the A stands for, when all curves are positive, and also the second quadrant, okay, that's when sine is positive. So that's the two I would normally tick for a sine question. However, if I'm thinking when sine is negative, it's the opposite two, okay? So it's normally the ones that you think are positive, you tick the other two, okay? And that's how we're going to deal with these questions today, folks, okay? So normally I'd be ticking all in sine, okay? They'd be when sine is positive. However, sine is negative here, okay? Therefore, I'm actually going to find my answer in the third quadrant and the fourth quadrant, okay? The opposite two from what I would normally do. Okay, now the main thing is to know I still need to get my answer for x in the first quadrant because it helps us work out the values for the answers in my third and my fourth quadrant. I still need to work out what x is, okay? But the answer that I get in my first quadrant won't be one of my final solutions, okay? Because that's not where the answers lie. It lies in the third and the fourth box, okay? So let's deal with the first quadrant, okay, to get my answer x. Okay, not my solution, but my answer x. So first quadrant, now this is the bit that I was noting earlier. We do not now think of this as a negative, okay? We've dealt with the negative's told us which ones to tick. We know it's going to be in the third and fourth, therefore I can now drop the negative, treat it like it's positive, okay? So sine of x would be 0.8, therefore x would be the sine inverse of 0.8, which would give me an answer of 53.1301 continued. Therefore, it would give me 53.13. Okay, so that is not one of my solutions. However, that is the x value I need to use in order to get my two solutions now. Okay, so my first answer actually lies in my third quadrant. So let's go to the third quadrant. And the rule in the third quadrant says I do 180 plus my answer x. Okay, that means it's going to be 180 plus 53.13. And if I do that properly, I should get the answer 233 0.13 degrees. Okay, so that is one of my answers. My next answer lies in the fourth quadrant. So that's going to be 360 minus my answer x. Okay, that's the rule it says there. So that's 360 minus 53.13, and that gives me an answer of 306. I'm going to write down the wrong number there. 0.87 degrees. Okay, so my solutions is x equals 233 degrees, 233.13 degrees, sorry, I should say, and 306.87 degrees. Okay, so you'll see here that because it was negative, we had to tick different values, different quadrants in my CAST diagram to what I would normally do for a sign question. I still had to get the answer for the first quadrant because it helped me work out it helps me work out the values in the third and the fourth quadrant. However, the solutions are just the third and the fourth quadrant. I didn't tick the first quadrant, so I could then ignore 53.13 from my solutions. Okay, so that's the first example. We'll copy the second one, and hopefully you see that it works very similarly at all times. Okay, you've just got to be careful which ones you're ticking. So the next example is when tan is now negative 0.56. Okay, so let's get my CAST diagram out. So all sine tan cos. We'll make this a bit quicker at getting this set up. Okay, so make sure you're setting this up properly, putting all your details like what I'm doing. So that's my first quadrant, that's my second, that's my third down here, and that's my fourth. Okay, let's add in the rules now. Okay, so first quadrant's just x, second quadrant is 180 minus x, third quadrant's 180 plus x, fourth quadrant 360, not plus x, my goodness, I'm getting that wrong, that would take me well past, minus x. Okay, so those are my rules there. So I'm thinking about when tan of x is negative 0.56, that's what I'm asked to solve. So normally if tan was positive, I'd tick the all quadrant and the tan quadrant. However, because it's negative, I need to tick the other two, which means I'm ticking the sine quadrant and the cos quadrant, which is my second and fourth quadrant. Okay, so that's where my solutions will lie. I still need to, however, find the value for x in my first quadrant though. Okay, so we do that first. So first quadrant, that's going to be tan of x. And now remembering that I do not need my negative now. The negatives told me which ones to tick. Therefore, once I've done that, I can now drop the negative. So it's going to be when tan of x equals 0.56. So do the tan inverse 0.56, which would give me an answer of 29.2488 continued, which is 29.25 degrees. Okay, so let's now get my solutions. Okay, so my solution first of all lies in the second quadrant. Okay, so second quadrant, the rule says it's 180 minus my answer x. Okay, so that's going to be 180 minus 29.25 degrees, which gives me 150.75 degrees there. Okay, so my first answer is 150.75 degrees. Let's move over to the fourth quadrant now. Okay, so that's rule is 360 minus x. Therefore, it's going to be 360 minus my answer for the first quadrant, 29.25 degrees, which gives me 330.75 degrees there. Okay, so my solutions is when x equals 150.75 degrees and 330.75 degrees also. Okay, so those are my two answers. Okay, those are two examples I want to ask you to copy down. Any questions, please make sure you ask me so that you can understand them. Then I'm going to ask you to try questions on that day where you have to deal with picking the right quadrants and dealing with the negative. Okay, thank you.